Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Today, Tuesday, is 1 week from the NFL's trade deadline, and Dennis Allen on his coach's show was pretty adamant when he was asked if the Saints might be sellers at the deadline.
I certainly don't think we're in the sell mode. You know, we're not looking to get rid of players. We're looking to improve as a football team, and if there's ways that we can do that, then we'll do that. You know, and so we have not been actively going out and shopping any of our guys. That's not our intention.
So I have a couple of things. On one hand, that's disappointing because I feel the same way I think a lot of you do, which is that this organization is going nowhere as it's currently structured. They've got to acknowledge it internally and then start to map their behavior toward an organization that understands what they are so they can start to fix it. And you're not going to fix it by continuing to give out bad contracts and continuing to invest into aging players with more money. That's just not a winning recipe. We continue to see this organization, this roster, regress. There is no denying that at this point. You are what you are. We all acknowledge it. They just haven't gotten there yet organizationally. The sooner they do, the better. You would hope that the first six-game losing streak in 20 years might be the wake-up call, but it doesn't seem to be. They're blaming the injuries. And yes, the injuries are part of it, but it also illustrates that you're basically just a house of cards when you lose your starting center and a gadget player and your offense goes to hell. You're old defensively. You're the worst defense in the NFL right now. That's not because Pete Werner was out. It's because you're old and you're not very good. Anyway, don't get me started again. But usually if you're going to be a seller at the trade deadline, you either need a veteran with a tradable contract or a talented young player that someone would want to acquire. Well, Dennis Allen doesn't seem to think they got any of those.
Yeah, look, I think we have some good young players. I don't know that we have any great young players, or at least we're not in that position yet. I think we've still got some young guys that, are developing that we hope can continue to get better and improve. But yeah, I think that's a valid question and a fair question.
When the head coach says point blank, we don't have any great young players, why don't you have any great young players? This isn't a trick question, by the way. Where do you get great young players? Muse, Paulie, it's not a trick question. Where do you get great young players?
Draft.
You get them at the draft. Thank you. You know what the Saints have not done well? They've not drafted well. When you use a first-round pick on Peyton Turner and he is not even playing, you're not better. When you use a second-round pick on Isaiah Foskey, and he's not part of your rotation. And that wasn't just a 2. That was a high 2. When you trade up to the first pick of day 3 to take Nick Saldiveri, and even amid all of the injuries on your offensive line, you can't even, he was so bad in that game on Monday Night Football against the Chiefs. They benched him, moved Lucas Patrick back to guard, and put Connor McGovern in at center. Connor McGovern had been with the team for 48 hours. That's how bad Nick Saldiveri is. You don't have good young players. You've one in Chris Olave, who's a good receiver, but I don't know that we can definitively say Chris Olave is a legitimate one. That he's when you think of number one receivers in the NFL, I think of Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and what Brian Thomas is becoming in Jacksonville and what Malik Neighbors showing he could be in New York. You don't have that guy. I think Olave's really good player. But if you flipped him, what would you get? And so then you look at your veterans and say, okay, well, who could you move? See, here's the thing. Yahoo earlier today did a feature where they listed 10 trades they'd like to see before the deadline. And one of them is one we mentioned last week on the show. We talked about this last week. When Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions got hurt, we talked about it on the show, so the Saints should trade Chase Young. The 49ers did this a year ago. They were a Super Bowl contender. Chase Young was with Washington. Washington traded Chase Young to the Niners. He was there for half a season, but made a run to the Super Bowl with him, and they came up just short. There's been all this talk about Max Crosby and Myles Garrett getting moved. That's not going to happen. So they mentioned, Yahoo mentioned the Lions trading for Chase Young. And it makes sense. He's not perfect, but he's motivated. He's in a one-year prove-it deal, and maybe motivated by going to a winning team with an opportunity to contribute on a team that could go to the Super Bowl. That's not the only thing they mentioned. I like that idea. I mentioned it here last week. The other thing, like right after that, among the 10 trades they'd like to see was the Saints trade just about everyone. Literally the words they used. The Saints trade just about everyone. The first line, no team needs a total reset more than the Saints. They've been stuck in mediocrity for a while, and in the past 6 games, they've collapsed. It's time to tear it down. They have plenty of aging veterans who could help a team win, like defensive end Chase Young, running back Alvin Kamara, linebacker DeMario Davis, maybe even defensive end Cam Jordan. But the Saints' 2-year extension to Kamara recently is a sign the most short-sighted team in the NFL is going to hold on to its veterans, which would be really dumb and totally on brand for the Saints. At the very least, Young and his 1-year deal should be dealt. We'll see. How about that punch right between the eyes? From an impartial third party looking at your organization. Everybody sees it except the Saints. Now, let me look at who you could trade, though. So there were 4 players they just mentioned. We just talked about Chase Young, which I'm on board with. The other 3 are Kamara, DeMario Davis, Cam Jordan. When we talk about trading players, the consideration is you're not just trading a player. Someone has to be willing to give you an asset in exchange for the player that provides them value and the player's contract. This is the problem with the Saints. Are there teams that would say, I think DeMario Davis still has some gas in the tank? Yeah, he could help us. Short term. Alvin Kamara is still running hard. He could help us. Yes, short term. Cam Jordan, maybe not so much. Here's the problem. You just extended Alvin Kamara 2 years, $24 million. He's still among the top 5 paid running backs in the NFL with that deal. Is there a team in the league that would say, yep, we'll give you an asset to take on that contract with a 30-year-old running back? Maybe, if they were desperate. Before the contract, I told you they should have traded Alvin Kamara to the Chiefs. They just did a deal to bring in what they hope is a receiver with some fuel left in the tank, and DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, the Chiefs are trying to get Patrick Mahomes weapons. Kamara would make so much sense. I don't know if they do the deal now with Alvin's contract that you just signed. So that probably eliminates any team from trading for Alvin Kamara. DeMario Davis, look at his contract. In 2025, DeMario Davis has a $12.4 million cap hit. But the Saints carry a $15.4 million dead number in 2025. So essentially, if DeMario Davis is on your team in 2025, he counts $12.4 million against the cap. If he's not on your team, he counts $15.4 million. That's the problem with doing bad contracts and continuing to restructure. You screw yourself because now you've got within cap compliance, but you have untradeable contracts. And then there's Cam Jordan. Cam's number next year is $20 million. His dead number is 23.9. So if Cam Jordan is playing for the Saints next year, his cap hit is $20 million. If he's not playing for you, his number is $23.9 million. Let me ask you a question. Is there a team in the NFL that would take on Cam Jordan at $20 million next year for a guy that through 8 games has 9 tackles? You know the answer. Flip it. Would you trade for Cam Jordan right now? Not Cam Jordan 3 years ago, Cam Jordan right now. You know the answer. That's the problem the Saints have. You have an old roster filled with bad contracts And so you don't even have assets to trade if you wanted to be a seller at the deadline. That's why you're stuck. The only way out of this is to stop the egregious spending, draft well, get younger and less expensive. That's it. That's your only path out. There is no other way out. They just don't seem to realize it. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.